Good evening, everybody. My name is Mr. Gallo. I'm going to be hosting today's David's Theme Show. This topic of the week, we're dealing with the ocean. With that being said, we have Mr. Jose is going to be dealing with the first layer of the ocean, the trench, followed by Mr. Brian with the abyss, followed by Mr. Wilson with the midnight layer, followed by Mr. Chris with the twilight, followed by Mr. Christian with the sunlight. After layers are being done, you have Mr. Tyler, who's going to be doing the current news in the ocean. After that, we have Miss Pauline, who's going to be doing the DIY section of our program. Ending that off, we have Mr. Chris, who's bringing us our weekly play of the week. With that being said, I'm sending you guys off to Mr. Jose with the first layer, the trench.
The ocean is a large and mysterious place, largely unexplored by us here on Earth. Yet, there's so much we can find in its depths. In the deepest layer, at the most bottomless part of the ocean, called the hadopelagic zone, also known as the trench layer, around 36,070 feet below the water's surface, you can find Challenger Deep, found in the Mariana Trench. And even here, some life does exist, but when James Cameron went down in 2012, he found it to be somewhat barren and practically sterile. It's hard to believe that anything could live so deep beneath the water's surface.
Thank you, Mr. Jose. After that, I'll send you guys off to right now with Mr. Brian with Abyss.
When we think about the ocean, we mainly think about its sandy beaches, bright sunny days, and its clear blue waters. But what if I told you there's a part of the ocean that has none of those qualities? Hello viewers, I'm Mr. Brian, and today we're going to be diving into the abyss layer and its many mysteries. So what exactly is the abyss layer? It is the second to last layer of the ocean, right before the trench layer. This layer of the ocean, the abyss, reaches down to 20,000 feet and gets very little sunlight, so most of it is darkness. As a result, there are no plants producing oxygen, and most of the oxygen that it does have comes from melted ice from the polar regions. The abyss layer makes up to 83% of the ocean and makes 60% of the Earth, making it the largest environment on Earth. And due to it reaching very little sunlight, temperatures can reach as far as 2 to 3 degrees Celsius or 36 to 37 degrees Fahrenheit. And like I mentioned previously, there is little to no oxygen on the sea floor of the abyss layer, which means that a lot of creatures that do rely on oxygen to survive meet their untimely demise if they swim too low. This death trap results in an abundant amount of decomposing organic material, which further leads to an abundant amount of nutrient salts such as nitrogen, phosphorus, and silica. Now, just because there's very little oxygen down there doesn't mean there's nothing living down there. The abyss layer is home to very few species of animals. We can find various animals down there, species like squid, fish, or worms, but what makes these creatures so unique is that evolution has forced these creatures to adapt to the environment to successfully be able to live and reproduce in the abyss. Some of these features of adaptation include gray and black coloration, and long legs or stalk to rise above the layers that have no oxygen. Some crustaceans may also be blind or sensitive to sunlight. Bioluminescence is another feature that these creatures have developed and is mainly used to lure small prey. However, there is a smaller population of carnivores and there is a lot larger population of small creatures that feed off of mud and suspended matter. There is still very little known about the abyss layer, just enough to make a 2-minute segment for our video. Hence, we're still discovering more and more about it every single day.
Alright, thank you, Mr. Brian, for that. I send you guys now off to Mr. Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Diallo, for that. Now, we're going to take you straight to midnight level.
as you all know, the first zone we have is the Sunlight Zone, brought to you by Mr. Christian. The next zone we have is the Twilight Zone, which was brought to you by Mr. Wilson. And now I bring to you the Midnight Zone. The Midnight Zone starts at about 1,000 meters and runs all the way to about 4,000 meters from the ocean surface. With no light, high pressures, and an average temperature just above freezing, this place is now a location where many animals can survive. But yet we don't know that much, so we have to continue to explore and discover the beautiful wonders in this zone. Now what you see in front of you is what you would see if you were to travel all the way down there. You see those little snowflakes? That's dead organic material that is basically food for these creatures that live down here. What kind of creatures live down here? Well, as you can see, we have the anglerfish, which is right there. And the next we have is the female and male black devil angler, a jellyfish, giant squids, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more to be discovered, and that's what is coming to us this year. As of March, a group of British scientists have set out to explore this place for about 5 weeks, but unfortunately we will not be able to see the results they have all the way up until 2022. So until then, guys, be sure to keep an eye out to see if anything else is produced, and stay safe. Till next time.
Thank you, Mr. Chris. With no further ado, send you guys off to Mr. Wilson.
In the layer between the sunlight layer and the midnight layer, we have the Twilight Zone. This layer is 200 to 1,000 meters below the ocean surface, just beyond the reach of sunlight. As a result, light is provided mostly by organisms through a process of bioluminescence, which is the light produced by living organisms. This layer has vast amounts of biodiversity, from many small microorganisms, some of the largest organisms on the planet, all in the Twilight Zone. It is very difficult for scientists to explore this Twilight Zone. This because you can't just use a boat and look down. So to get everything that we have is from many expeditions. Who knows what else will we find in the Twilight Zone?
Now I'll send you guys off to the current news with Mr. Tyler.
Now, if you're wondering what kind of creatures marine scientists are still discovering in the deep sea, just take a look at this. In March, researchers diving in a vessel off the coast of Western Australia discovered a coiling, stringy organism 2,000 feet below the surface. It's called a siphonophore, and may be the longest sea organism ever discovered, measuring approximately 150 feet. Siphonophores come in a variety of shapes and sizes and live in the entire expanse of the pelagic zones, with at least 175 species on record. One example of a small siphonophore is the Portuguese man-o'-war, which many mistake for a type of jellyfish. At the macro scale, siphonophores appear to be individual organisms, but in fact, each siphonophore is a colony of zooids, which are clusters of cells that clone themselves thousands of times to produce an extended, string-like body. This asexual budding process produces a colony of multicellular zooids with specialized parts that function together like a single animal. Larger siphonophores, like this one, tend to live in deeper waters, as they are generally longer and more fragile and must avoid strong currents. In fact, the majority of siphonophores live in the deep sea and can be found in all of the oceans. They are typically long and thin, floating in the deep sea and using bioluminescence to attract prey, which they sting and envelop with their tentacle-like gastrozoids.
To end this off, I'm going to send you guys to Mr. Chris with the very best play of the week.
Welcome back, STEM fans. Today we're bringing you a historic, if not one of the greatest achievements in recent human history. A 17-man crew set out to achieve the impossible. January 23rd, 1960. On the right, Jacques Picard, 37-year-old Swiss engineer. On the left, Dan Walsh, 28-year-old certified marine officer, looking to take the submarine known as Tri-Sea to the deepest part of the ocean, Challenger Deep, and Pacific's Mariana Trench. They are looking to travel a total of 11,000 kilometers downward, hopefully find some life, and maybe make some other interesting discoveries, and to go where no man has gone before. As they travel further and further into the ocean, it gets colder, darker, and an immense amount of water pressure is put on the submarine. Every 10 meters it drops. At 30,000 feet, a whopping 150,000 tons of pressure is placed onto the submarine. And BAM! A loud thump is heard. Not knowing where the sound comes from, our engineer and submarine officer check around for any leaks and make sure that their systems are still working properly. After they have ensured that, they have a decision to make. Do they keep going or do they retreat? But just like in Great Human Spirit, they decide to keep pushing. They can go all the way! We have touchdown, submarine officers! But right before they land, what's that? A bird? A plane? No! It's a fish! Proving that life does exist at the bottom of the ocean. What a discovery for mankind! And with that, they return back to the land from where they came. As pioneers, superstars, and as heroes. Thank you, Mr. Picard and Mr. Walsh, for bringing inspirations to all.
Do you believe in miracles? Yes!
Thank you, Mr. Chris, for the play of the week. And now, following my viewers at home, this message is for you. If you guys don't mind, please send us your clean play of the week that you guys can sit down and record yourself or find. We can all judge and put on. We sit and pick and put our own favorite POW. Thank you very much. You guys have a good rest of the night. Stay smooth, stay safe, be active. Bye, guys.
You wanna see my fire tonight? Take it with me, take it with me.
But if I left, then it made no sense. And you tell your friends, and they want your hands, baby, never mind.